often those things. Everybody's on my phone. So it's breaking my face.
Which one of these do we make a good shoe?
Well, you should wear them, you should have them.
Is everybody okay?
Well, that's a nice show.
You know, like the blonde paint, she always wears.
So we're gonna look at the comments.
Yeah, it seems to be the issue.
She's one of my good friends. She had Coastal on Corey Avenue, and she's beautiful. She wears high heels all the time, but with shorts, and she dances
Yeah.
in those things. I don't know how she does it. I just see on my face, she doesn't shop it. She's like, oh, you gotta wait for those.
Yeah, right.
Is anybody on the broadcast? Can you see whether we got it?
Oh, I want that dress.
That's when I have to exchange. Yeah, I'm really glad you did that. That looks better like that.
I'd like to put a logo behind us.
Oh, that would be good.
Yeah.
Can we have one? Yeah, like this.
Guys, are we broadcasting?
We might.
Yes, you are.
Yeah, the voice Sunday at the moment.
Okay.
No picture?
Uh,
Hey, we got voice only, no picture. I can't hear you. You're in the wind or something. Yeah. I think it's on live now. You're not on, are you? Do you have a picture yet?
Yeah.
All right.
We got a picture?
We got a picture.
And you got sound. Okay, we got it. You're not watching, right? Okay, I guess we're all right. We're starting. Okay, we got it here. We got it. All right, thanks.
Yeah.
Later. Travel safe.
This is a true story.
Okay, good afternoon, everybody. Jim Beggins and Tabitha
English.
English.
Yes.
All right, so what did we do last week? We talked about for sale by owners.
Yeah, boomer busts last week. We were talking about what direction the market's going and kind of how to win in each market too.
We did, didn't we?
Yeah.
All right, so today we're going to talk about exquisite property auctions.
Auctions. There's not many of those going on here, are there?
Well, there's not many going around here, but I want to bring you up to date on why we're doing what we're doing. Because if you know why we're doing what we're doing, you'll tend to understand it and then be able to sell it.
Okay.
If you're an agent. And after I explain what we're doing, then you're going to be a seller,
Okay.
and we're going to talk about auctions.
Okay, how it
And
will
how
work.
simple it could work.
Okay.
Now, you know we do scripts, and we do scripts to find out what our client is doing. And the more information we get, it allows them to give us objections.
Yeah.
And when we get to the auction concept, there's only one possible objection for someone to not do an auction.
Yeah, I don't want my neighbors thinking that I'm going bankrupt or something bad happened to me.
What would our neighbors think?
Yes, exactly.
All right, the story. 25 years ago,
Okay, 23.
I was in Australia in business, on a business trip. And one of the things I did on the business trip was visit an old buddy of mine who had a Century 21 master franchise in the country of Australia. And what he did was, I wanted to find out from Marvin what differences there were in Australia real estate compared to real estate in this country. So he said, well, why don't you just go to one of the offices? They have them every week, auctions. And tomorrow at 10 o'clock in the morning, there's an auction at one down the street. So go
Check it out.
to it,
See
check
what
it
it
out.
is.
So I went in, and there were 8 or 10 people in the room, and a little PowerPoint presentation set up. Auctioneer comes in with a little briefcase, sets it up
Okay.
in front of the room, and he
Right?
says, okay, we're going to sell 3 houses today at auction. And he picked up one, and he said, okay, this auction, this house is going to be sold at auction. Who bids on it? Okay, you bid $300 on it, Australian dollars, and you bid 310, 320, 330, and he gets up to $400,000.
Right?
Sold. All right, no more bidders. That person goes to the secretary, signs the contract, and we do the next auction. Next auction sells, the third auction doesn't sell. The guy
Okay.
says, thank you very much, goodbye.
What kind of
I
good
said, wait
gig
a
is
minute.
that? How do
This
you
is
get
kinda
this
neat.
job?
How do you be an auctioneer? So I said, boy, I wonder if we could bring that back to the US. And so
Yeah.
I researched on how they did it, and it was so simple. I said, hey, I'm going to work on this. So I worked on it for years and years and years, a little bit.
Okay.
And finally said, well, the only way I'm going to make this happen is to be an auctioneer.
All
So I
right.
bought a truck, and the truck was a motorhome. And I said, you know what? I could probably do auctions, travel around the country.
Oh, neat
And
gig.
when I sell a house or something, I sell it, take the money, and then I go
Go
and
travel a
go
little bit
travel
more.
somewhere else. So that's great. So how do I get an auction license? So I signed up for an auction class. It took 10 days. Stayed in the little motorhome that I bought, and got an auctioneer's license.
So it only takes 10 days to become an auctioneer.
It only takes 10 days of schooling every day, 7 days a week.
Okay, all right.
So, because you've got to learn all the unique things about auctions. And one unique thing I found about auctions was that the auctioneers and the people that taught the school didn't really understand what the Australian concept was. And as I tried to explain it to them, they didn't get it.
What is it gonna do?
Well, I didn't know. And then I went to broker friends of mine and tried to explain the auction concept to them. And they didn't get it because they said, we don't want auctions because an auctioneer takes all the money and gives us no money. So
They feel like they're being cut out of the deal.
they think they're being cut out of the deal, or the best case is they might get 2% on an auction,
So a reduced
or
commission.
maybe 1%.
Okay.
And the auctioneer kind of talks people out of bringing, agents bringing people to auctions. So, okay, well, let's see if we can simplify it. So we simplified it, and remember, this was 25 years ago,
Years ago,
the idea, and we just did our first auction about 8 months ago.
A lot of getting ready to get ready.
That's a lot of get ready to get ready. But nobody else was doing it. So I didn't have
Any
didn't have
competition.
no competition. So the first one we did was an agent one of our agents whose son is a lawyer selling a house on 30 acres in a place called Duet.
Huh.
You know where Duet is?
No, I got a clue.
Duet is, if you go towards the east coast of Florida on the right street, and I'm not sure which one it is, you'll go through Duet.
Okay.
And it was a horse farm, cow farm type thing.
All right. Equestrian
So
property.
we went and explained the concept to the auction to the attorney and his dad.
Yeah.
And we listed the place for like $800,000.
Oh, you listed it. You didn't put it back.
We listed it, but we explained the auction. We said the way the auction works, it's a 3-phase auction. So the first phase is just like a regular listing.
Okay.
except we put in the remarks that this house will be sold at auction.
Okay, so it just goes on the MLS.
Just
and
goes
all
on
the-
MLS, and the attorney really had trouble with, he was a pretty prominent attorney in Tampa. He had problems with auction because being a prominent attorney, he didn't want people to think that he was in trouble selling the house.
Yeah, exactly.
So after a month or so, he said, I don't want that auction word in there. So we took it out. And the house stayed on the market for over 6 months.
Okay. Any
We didn't-
offers?
We got global offers in the $400,000, $500,000.
Okay.
Because the challenge with Duet was if you had horses to raise, you raise them in Ocala.
Right.
Nobody
The horse
knew
farms.
Duet was a horse type area. So I get a call from the lawyer, I guess it was more than 6 months, and he said, you know what, I'm going to list the property with someone else, or maybe we should go to auction. And I said, okay, well, let's go to auction.
Auction. Don't list with someone else.
So we went to auction with the thing, and it sold for in the high sevens, almost $800,000.
Okay, so close to asking.
Yeah, and actually it was way overpriced to start. So the attorney, the reserve price at the auction was about $550,000. Once we hit that, we got it up to 700.
Everything was gravy on top of that.
So it worked. So he said, okay, this now has some traction. What are we going to do with it? So
Proven
let's go
concept.
forward and say you are a seller. You have an expired listing, and it's over $1 million.
Yes.
And what I'm going to do with you is explain how the auction concept works. And basically, without a specific script, try to do it as simple as possible.
Okay.
So my phone call would be, hi, Tabitha.
Hey, Jim.
Beggins with Section 21 Beggins.
How's it going?
Your house came up as an expired listing, and I want to talk about it. Is it a good time?
It's been on the market twice, Jim. Yeah, go ahead. What do you got to say?
So it's worth around $1 million, right?
Yeah, we've been trying to get that for, almost 2 years now.
All right. Traditional real estate, you know how it works. You've been listed a couple of times, right?
Yes.
And no one's been able to sell it.
No.
I want to offer you an alternative method of selling the real estate. It is not something that you have to do. It's something you might want to do. Now, who are you going to interview this next time for putting the house on the market?
Jim, I'm very frustrated. It's after 2 years, I think I'm just going to put a for sale sign in the yard for sale by owner. And if it really does, I guess I'll talk to agents again, but I'm really not ready at this point. I'm just frustrated.
Okay, well-
That for sale by owner sign, I know it's just going to bring me more agents, but quite possibly I might get the buyer.
Well, we also know that inventory is very low. When inventory is low, a lot of people decide to sell their house themselves. $60,000 commission on $1 million house is a lot of money. If you
Absolutely.
can save that money, God bless you.
Yeah, but I've just seen agents, and when good agents listed it, and we haven't gotten any offers, so
Okay,
what am I
well,
gonna do?
let's talk about the auction.
Okay.
No obligation. The auctions that we do, we've done 9 of them. We've sold 8 out of 9 of the properties. All right, so
Good
we have a
results.
success record.
Yeah.
And look at this beautiful little baby. Cooper.
Worming.
All right, so let's look at, if we put your house on the market at $1 million or $1.1 million or $1.2 million or whatever you decide on,
Okay, last time I had it listed, it was $1.2 million.
$1.2 million. Okay. So what if I got you $1.2 million and you paid no commission?
And Jim, I'd be really happy with you.
Okay. Well, I don't know at this point whether we can get $1.2 million. I'll have to do a strategic pricing analysis, which will put you in charge of knowing exactly what it's worth. All right, but let's forget about that right now.
Okay.
Whatever the price you get for your house, if we decide to go to auction, you pay $0 commission.
Well, I can get behind that, Jim, but I just don't want my house sold at, a discount. I don't want to sell it for $800,000. I don't want to give it away.
Okay, well then, let me explain how the auction concept works.
Okay.
It's a 3-phase auction.
All right.
Right? You list your property in phase 1 for a determined period of time, let's say 90 days.
Okay. So we go back on the
We
market.
go back on the market as a traditional listing with Central 21 Beggins for 90 days.
Okay.
The only difference between this listing and an auction listing is one word. In the description, we put, this home will be sold at auction to the highest bidder.
Oh, Jim, I don't know how I feel about that.
Okay, well, let me explain to you how you probably feel like that.
Yeah, yeah.
About that. There is one objection to people putting their house on auction.
Yeah.
And that objection is the main reason why auctions work. And that objection is, what will my neighbors think?
I know. I mean,
Will they think the house is in bad shape? Would they think that the neighbor is desperate to sell? Would
right,
they
is something
think,
wrong with my house?
is
and I
there
need to
something
just
wrong with the
unload it.
house? Okay, so let's switch gears a little bit and say you are a buyer
Okay.
and you're looking for a house in the $1.2 million range that looks similar to this particular house.
Yeah, okay.
And let's say there's 5 on the market that you're going to look at today.
Right, well, yeah, and that's probably all there is. There's not a lot of inventory.
Okay, so let's pick 5.
Okay.
And let's say that a buyer comes in and they're going to look at the 5. And something happens, they get a call from their daughter and she says, jump on an airplane, come by it, Mom, we got a special surprise party for you or something.
Oh.
And you only have time to look at one of the 5 houses. And one of them says, this house will be sold at auction. And all 5 of them are basically the same, very similar. You only have time to look at one house. Which house are most people going to go look at?
Yeah, I'm going to look at that auction property, Jim, because I'd be worried that it wouldn't be there when I came back. I would think
So,
that I better be the first one there, or at least
okay,
have
so
a chance at it.
if there's 5 on the market and you only have a chance to look at one, you're going to look at that one.
Absolutely, if I liked them all equally.
So if you look at that one and you say, oh my God, I had no idea this is our dream home.
Now I don't want it to go to auction, Jim.
Now you don't want to go to
I don't want it to go to auction.
So under
Can
the
I buy it?
Australian method, your agent, whoever it would be, would say, hey, you know what, the auction is coming up. We better put an offer in on it right now.
Right,
All right?
or it becomes competitive.
Before it goes to auction. All right, so during the first 90 days of the auction, by just putting the auction word in, you have not committed to go to auction. You've suggested that you're going to go to auction, which is going to let all the buyers know that you are anxious to sell your property.
Well, yes, I guess that would be
And
good.
you could say desperate if you want to say desperate.
Yeah, I hate that word, Jim. It
Okay.
sounds bad. I don't want. I'm not
So-
desperate to sell. I mean, if we have to keep it, we
Okay.
keep it.
So then we don't do auction.
Ah,
But let's go back to the Australian method where for 90 days it's on the market.
got it.
And then you say, well, wait a minute, situation changed. I got a great deal on a house in Michigan. I just put an offer on it.
I don't
I want
want
to
it to be
make sure that we have to sell that house in the next 45 days.
Yeah, I don't want to be contingent on the sale. I would.
All right, so if
Yeah.
you're going to go with a traditional company without the auction, then you are not going to be able to pick the date that you sell the house. So for the next 30 to 45 days, if you want to buy that house in Michigan, you better continually lower your price until you get someone to buy. Now,
That doesn't sound like a good option.
so let's look at the opportunity. Buying a house in Michigan, you have to close in 45 days. We've been on the market 3 months with the auction word in there.
Right.
We've had 2 or 3 offers, none of them acceptable to you.
Okay.
And now we say, okay, we got to have an auction, have this sold and closed in the next 45 days.
Yes.
Right? So you decide then to go to auction.
Okay.
The way you go to auction is we have to promote the auction. We have to pay money to get people in that house on auction day, on sale day, to bid on that house.
Yes.
So we require you, or we suggest that you advance to us, to our advertising company, 1/2 of 1% of the value you think your house is going to sell for. And let's say it's $1 million.
Okay.
So 0.5% is a $5,000 check you write to us.
Okay.
For that advertising agency. We will account for where that money is spent. Now, 30 days before the auction, we sign a listing agreement with American Heritage Auctions, who is the #1 auctioneer in the Southeast United States. They've been doing it for 35 or 40 years.
Wow. Okay.
Your listing now goes from a Beggins Enterprises listing to a joint listing with Beggins Enterprises and American Heritage Auctions.
Okay.
Nobody else is going to look at your house for 30 days because we have a 30-day promotional period where the advertising kicks in. Everyone that calls, the calls goes to American Heritage Auctions, and they say, you can't look at the house. We have an inspection done on the house. You can only look at it 2 hours before the auction.
Okay.
All right?
All right.
So we are building a database. We're taking our existing database and building an additional database with your $5,000.
Oh, nice. Okay.
So on auction day or sale day,
Right.
30 days from when you decide to go to auction, we then hold the auction.
Okay.
All right?
Is there a reserve price on this, Jim? How am I
It
protected?
is always a reserve auction, and you do not set your reserve price until the day of the auction.
Oh, good. Okay.
And there is no amount of the reserve price until the auctioneer talks to you. So
Okay.
let's fast forward to the auction date.
All right.
So let's say we get 15 people show up to the auction.
All qualified buyers, I'm
All
assuming?
qualified buyers, because they have to be pre-qualified to write a check for 10% of whatever it sells for that day. And that check is non-refundable.
Oh, those are serious buyers. I
They're
like that.
serious buyers. They'll have an inspection to look at, and if anything on the inspection is not fixed, then we'll fix it, but the inspection
Am
is
I
all.
obligated to fix that, Jim?
No, you're not obligated to fix it.
We
But
can
the
sell
house
it
is
as-
sold as is, where is on sale day.
Okay.
So now let's go to the sale day. We got 15 bidders in
Right.
the house, all set up nicely, and the bidding starts.
Oh, God.
So,
Even
let's
thinking
say-
about it, I get nervous. Okay, so how does this work?
So with 15 bidders, we're probably going to have 4 or 5 of those bidders that are serious.
Okay.
And let's say the bidding starts at $600,000 and it goes up to $900,000 and
Okay.
stops there. Well,
We're close to my number, Jim.
remember, we're close to your number and you pay no commission. So
Okay.
your number has changed. If you
It went
took-
down 60 grand right there. Well, wait a minute. What about the 5 grand I gave you? It went down 55.
The 5 grand comes back to you.
Really?
So let's keep that on the side for a minute.
Okay.
So the bidding goes forward to $900,000. The auctioneer thinks, wow, we got 4 bidders here. We bid up pretty quick to 900,000. I know that 3 out of 4 of the bidders are really interested. Let me stop the bidding right now and talk to my client. The auctioneer stops, goes over to you and says, Tabitha, we have $900,000, which is really $990,000 that the person is paying for it. If you decide to lift the reserve and go absolute auction, from our experience having those competitive bidders, it will go from 900,000 up higher, and we're not sure how high. Sometimes it goes a lot higher. So if you say, okay, I will lift the reserve, the auctioneer comes back to the mic and says, okay, ladies and gentlemen, we have reached our reserve price. This house will be sold where is, as is, to the highest bidder right now. I have 900,000 who bid 910.
What bidders?
910, 925, 925, 935, 935, 950, 950, 975, you over there, 975. Okay, got 975, 980, 980 going once, got 980, 980 going twice. Okay, you over here, go 982. All right, we got 982. How about you, 985?
Yeah.
Okay, okay, you done? You done? Yes. Okay, 985 going once. You ready? You want to come up a little more? No, no, no. 90 twice. Sold $980,000. All right, now what happens? The $980,000, you got to add 98,000 to that. The guy has to write a check for 10% of $1,080,000 or whatever it comes to. You get the 980,000, pay no commission, and you get your $5,000 back.
Oh, that almost seems too good to be true.
Okay, well, it is too good to be
And I
true.
mean,
because
whenever I was taught, whenever something was too good to be true, that it is. So what's the catch?
the catch is that the Australian auction is a three-phase auction.
Okay.
The first phase is designed to let you know what the market's doing with your house. So you got a couple offers that were as high as $850,000, so it's probably not worth the $1 million that you said, but you got that education.
Right.
When we went to the auction, that input that you got from phase one, the 90-day period as a traditional listing,
Listen.
taught you what the property's pretty much worth, and we'll update our pricing analysis to the day of the auction
Okay.
to show you that. A third of the properties sell before the auction, and you can see why, because more people will come look at your house, and those that look at your house, if they like it, will tend to make an offer.
Right. Because I don't want to compete at the auction.
Right. And when it gets to auction, if it sells at auction, you pay zero commission, you pay nothing because you get your $5,000 back too.
Oh, that's
Now
nice.
let's say that the auctioneer comes to you and says, lift your reserve price and say, no, I'm not going to, the market's going up and I really think I should get $1.2 million for it now.
Right.
And you say, no, I'm not going to list my reserve.
Yeah, I'm not lifting the reserve.
Okay, so the auctioneer comes back and says, okay, we have not
Net reserve.
met the reserve price. We're at $900,000. Do I hear 925, 925, 930, 930, 930? Okay. Anybody else? 930. Okay. The bid is closed at 9:30. Just a minute. I'll go back to talk to my client, and they'll go to you at 9:30. Say you get 9:30 in your pocket. You get your $5,000 back. Do you want to take it or don't you? And you say no.
No, I
All right.
really think I can give them 1-1, maybe 1-2.
Okay. So phase one failed. Phase two failed. Thank you very much, everybody. Have a nice weekend. Goodbye. All right. Now we have you, and you say, okay, now what?
Right.
It didn't make it in phase one. It didn't make it in phase two.
How are we going to make this
Well,
work?
you know what? When I was in Australia, the brokers said 1/3 sells before, 1/3 sells at, and 1/3 sells after.
Okay.
Okay. So now I want you to relist this house with me for another 60 days. So we'll have a total of 6 months on the market.
Okay.
And you say, I don't want to do that. I think I could go with Aardvark Realty. I think they'll do a better job. My sister's got a license or whatever.
Okay.
Say, okay, Tabitha, that's fine. You can take your property off the market if you want. And you say, oh, by the way, how about my
My
$5,000?
$5,000, Jim. Where's my money?
Well, your money only comes back to you because unless you relist it with us. Now, if we look at the history of the auction, in phase one, we had 3 offers. They didn't meet your price. The strategic pricing analysis said your price was too high. At the auction, we stopped the bidding at $925,000. You can see the strategic pricing analysis said you should have got that
Right.
much less than that,
Oh,
and it didn't work. Now we've done all this work. Now we need a couple of months to put it back on the market at a better price. You know what happened in phase 1, you know what happened in phase 2. Now we're going to put it back on the market at phase 3. Here are the figures that you got. What price do you want to do? You want to sell it at? If it sells in phase 3, which the Australian model has a third of the properties selling in phase 3.
Okay.
And you can see why, right?
Yeah.
You didn't get to the price, you thought the market was going up and all this other stuff,
Right.
but you got quite an education in
Along the way.
4 months, right?
Yeah.
All right,
absolutely.
so we're going to put it on at a new price for 60 days, 90 days, whatever we agree. If I sell it, you're going to pay the standard commission, and I'll give you the $5,000 back out of that.
Okay.
If you decide to list it with Aardvark Realty, you're not going to get the $5,000 back. And you knew that up front.
Yeah. All right. But I also know that, I mean, I've got a good shot at selling it even at this point. So, I mean, I feel a little less discouraged
But we also know what
that
price
I've
it's going to
missed the
sell.
price point entirely.
But you'll get the price point if you lower your price enough, and you know we've been working with you.
Yeah.
But your option, if you want to go with someone else, fine. It costs you $5,000.
And I'm not going to do that. I mean, I'll stay where I am. And, you know, I mean, would you be willing to represent my price, Tim? I mean, I think I'm.
I don't know. I will do a strategic pricing analysis for you.
Okay.
Here's the Wallet 5 and Dark demonstration of why we're going to do what we're going to do, and what it
Okay.
will tell you.
All right.
And it'll take me a few days to do that. Now,
Well,
this is
of
just
course.
part of my presentation to you. It's an alternate thing. If
Yeah.
you can't get over the fact of what your neighbors are going to think, then that's fine. Don't do it. Do you think it's fairly creative?
Yes.
Okay. So let's say we don't do it. And
Okay.
I still want to interview for the job of selling the house.
Okay.
Right, so I'll go through the house,
Yeah.
I'll do a preview, I'll do a strategic pricing analysis, I'll tell you what it comes out at, it'll take you a couple of days. Here's the link to our listing presentation. It mentions the auction in there, you're not obligated to do it, we'll put that on the back burner. And I'll do a marketing presentation in a couple of days.
Fair
Fair
enough.
enough?
Yeah.
Okay. All right, so the auction itself is a tool which some people are not going to use. I know that we have one in Ruskin that we've been working on for about 2 years. The lady was all fired up with it. And
Okay.
here's a unique property. It's got 10 acres with a dog grooming area, 2 air-conditioned barns, a double-wide trailer, a nice house. 7 of the 10 acres are zoned for development. And build 5 units per acre on it. And the other things are you could run a business on it. Lady's all fired up, but she was very prominent in Ruskin, old-time family. And she really liked the auction concept, but then she decided not to do it because she didn't know what her
Here's
people
what
would
thing.
think. All right, so 6 months after that, our agent goes to relist it, and she says, now I want to hear more about the auction. I think I'm ready for it. So
Yeah, I think you become more accustomed or comfortable with it after a little more time.
yeah, but that didn't work.
It didn't
So
work that time either?
She was going to do it, and she said, no, I'm not sure what my people will think, but I'll relist it with you.
Okay.
So our agent got an extension on the listing,
All right.
and she still hasn't done
The auction
So-
yet.
However, it's an ideal auction property. So at some point, if it's 3 years down the line, she knows the benefit, she knows the objection. As soon as she figures out that she's moving and she doesn't care what her,
Neighbors
What her
think
neighbors
it up because
might
you're
happen.
not going to have to be there.
so all the auction is a way to set you apart from other agents, to show that you care about your clients and you're giving them an alternative solution to the problem, one which does not cost them a dime.
Now, I think that that's one of the really powerful tools we have at Century 21 Beggins. It is because right now we're facing a lot of disruptors in this industry, and a lot of them are the discounts that you and I have talked about in the past, the discount brokerages. the 2%, the offer pads. And this gives us a tool in our arsenal that not only competes with that, but it actually smokes it. It says, you know what, never mind discounted commission, let's go for 0.
But you still have the objection of the first phase and the third phase. You're charging a full commission. But you're also throwing out that Hail Mary pass and paying no commission.
Yeah,
So
exactly.
we found that people will generally pay the 6% in phase 1 because they say, I'm going to get them. I'll pay them 6%, but I'm not going to accept any offers in phase 1.
Oh,
So
that's
I just
interesting.
wanted to
Yeah,
go
okay,
off.
I just wanted to
So
get auction.
everybody's different.
Right.
So we have competitors that are doing auctions. I've not found any except for one in San Diego, California, that is doing 3-phase auction.
Okay.
And when I researched them, I found out that it's 2 women that are from Australia.
Of course.
And that's the only one I found.
And they got
so
the
far
idea and they took it with
that's
us.
doing that. So it's not a panacea. It's just something that you can offer to a client to get in the door and explain it.
Yeah, it's certainly a tool.
Now, since most of us don't know, couldn't repeat what I just said, and really don't fully understand it, we don't want you to understand it as an agent. We want you to turn it over to the auctioneer and myself, or the auctioneer and Jeff,
Right.
who all understand this, and then we will get on a conference call with that prospective client of our agent, and worst case, solidify the listing for you.
I like that.
Best case, get them to sign the auction addendum.
That's a recruiting tool for me, Jim. I like that, to be able to say that the founder for Century 21 is going to be on the phone with your clients, helping you close
Yeah.
deals.
Now,
That's really nice.
one of the big things, one of the big reasons that we only want to do expensive properties is because of this connotation of an auction being for distressed properties. On the contrary, when you find properties around the world that are really exquisite, I mean, ski resorts, if somebody wants to buy a house in a ski resort, they may buy one in France, they may look at France, they may look at Colorado, they may look at Switzerland, and their budget is $20 million.
That's an interesting spot.
Yeah, it's a very interesting spot and a very hard one to do because you have to look up properties in Crested Butte and Switzerland and Italy and different mountain areas and use that. Now, ironically, this idea about auctions being for distressed properties, you'll find, and I got this from our auctioneer, Mike Peters, the real expensive auction houses in the world
Christie's.
are generally advertising agencies, because someone that's selling a $20 or $30 million house many times will put up $100,000 or $200,000 in promotion to sell that house.
Yes.
Now, why would they consider doing that?
It makes financial sense.
Well, it makes financial sense because they can't find comps for it. Because you got a $20 million house, you can't take two $20 million houses and find them in the same subdivision.
Yeah.
They're all going to be different and
Right.
totally different. So you've got to really do an extensive advertising campaign. So when you're selling $1 million house for someone to say, I don't want to go to auction because that's for distressed properties, that's not the case. Auction companies that do exquisite houses, very, very expensive artwork, all unique properties are charged a lot of money up front for promotion, and they do not give any of it back. If the thing fails at auction, you've lost your $100,000 or your $50,000. So, kind of interesting.
They're taking a gamble, but I mean, usually people that have those kind of properties I would make the assumption, but I think that's not,
Well, what else are you going to do with
Educated.
it? You're going to put it on MLS or
that's not going to do.
Pinellas Realtor Organization for a
No.
$20 million ski chalet?
No.
So the idea that an auction is for distressed properties is in the mind of the seller to start with,
Right.
and is in the mind of the buyer, but it's the idea in the mind of the buyer that makes him come to the auction because he thinks he's going to get a deal. Then he's sitting in an auction with a bunch of other multi-gazillionaires,
Right.
and the money isn't really important. He just wants to beat that guy in the third row.
Yes, I testify to that one. Yeah, that does happen.
So
You don't
now
always
we
know.
have two auction companies that are pretty interesting. One is called Christie's and one is called Sotheby's.
I'm familiar with both of them.
Okay. Sotheby's I'm very familiar with because Sotheby's was bought by Realogy, which is the parent of Century 21 and Coldwell Banker. It's in the same team,
Yeah,
right? Different brand.
right.
When Realogy bought Sotheby's, they did not buy the auction division of Sotheby's. So any Sotheby's company that is doing auctions is leading people to believe that the Sotheby's name is behind the auction when it isn't. It's Joe Big Butt Belt Buckle Smith, who's the auctioneer, who's been hired by Sotheby's.
How would you ever know that, though, Jim?
You won't. Except you have to
I mean,
know.
all my marketing material would say Sotheby's, and it would be Sotheby's on my sign. And
Well, it'll say.
how would I know that
It'll say
Big Bob's belt buckle was
Christie's.
representing me?
who's Christie's, Coastal Properties. It'll say at the bottom of the brochure, or it should, like ours say, each office is independently owned and operated,
Okay.
according to the agreement with Christie's.
Right.
And the agreement with Christie's is not, as far as I know, and I know it's not in Sotheby's, that they don't have the right to take over and portray themselves
As
as
an
a
auction
Christie's
house.
auctioneer, because Christie's is auctioning in a tuxedo,
Yes.
$4 million artwork, and they don't want to be associated with $1 million house.
Yes.
Okay. So the unique thing about our auctions is that they're so simple that they're complicated.
Okay. What do you mean by that, Jim?
Well, if I asked any agent that's looking in right now to explain what I just explained without making a mistake, it began there impossible. And out of the 8 office things that we did, auctions we did that were successful, there were little glitches that came up in every one that we had to figure out how to handle.
What do you mean glitches? What kind of stuff are you facing?
Well, for example, some of them we would not have sold unless we did commission adjustments. So where the buyer is paying a 10% buyer premium,
Yeah.
we would sometimes have to lower that premium to make the deal happen and go back and forth to the buyer and seller and negotiate.
Okay. So after the auction, then Beggins' team takes over? Is that how that
I'm glad you
works?
brought that up, because anybody that is at the auction, and many times the auction will be successful, but not on the auction date.
Okay. Elaborate.
And let's say that the bidding on this house stops at 9:20,
Okay.
and everybody goes home. Well, there were 4 bidders, one at 9:10, one at 8:89, one at 9:25, and they all go home. And the agreement says that if you buy this house within 30 days, I think it's 90 days, we're trying to change it to a shorter time.
Okay.
Anytime that one of those buyers buy that house, there's a 10% buyer premium in there,
Okay.
and it's just like they bought it at the auction.
Okay.
So about a third of the ones that we've done were, the contract wasn't consummated until a couple of days after the auction.
Which means there was a lot of negotiations going on after that auction took place.
And in every case, we got to a price that was higher than the price that you didn't reserve to go to absolute auction at. But
Okay.
they went home and thought about it and said, well, I've lost it at this price, They talk to their wife or their husband and they say, but we could afford to do this, so they call the auctioneer back and they work with it.
Oh, okay. As the agents, do you guys get involved with those buyers?
No, it's the auctioneer's client.
Oh.
Will get involved with half of the commission, because Beggins will get half the commission.
Right.
And I'm not going to get into the commissions at that point specifically, but phase one, if you want to utilize me and utilize the auctioneer
Right.
to help you get the listing, there's a 25% referral fee.
Okay.
When it goes to auction, there is no 25% referral fee. It's a 50-50 split between Beggins and the auctioneer, but it's a 10% commission. So
Okay.
it's 5% for Beggins, 5% for the auctioneer.
Oh, that's nice.
If it goes back on
So
phase three, and you're expecting the auctioneer to pay the $5,000 back, or all of us to pay it back, then there's a 25% referral fee in phase three.
Okay.
So it's just like you getting a referral from another company outside of the state or something.
Right.
We're all okay with giving a 25% referral.
Absolutely.
If the auction word gets you the listing and it doesn't sell at auction, you have to pay 25%. It's probably good for you.
Absolutely. I want the buyers, and I want to sign in the yard as well. Recognition.
Okay. Do you guys understand it?
Yeah.
Tim, Trish, any questions?
Do you do a spot first phase and the third phase
Okay,
as well?
let's use the auction as just one of our tools. The spa is the most, to me, done right, the spa is the most important tool that we have, whether you do an auction or not. The spa is the thing that keeps the people, will get you the preview appointment, because if you convince the person that they want this document, then they will set the preview appointment with you. And then at the preview, you set the marketing appointment. So they'll tend to, once they understand the Wallet 5 and DART, they will tend to want to know what the results of that spa are. So if you have to wait 3 days before you get time to do it, they'll wait 3 days. In the meantime, if they have another client coming in, another listing coming in, they will most likely not sign with that other person until they see the information that you have. I almost never have someone sign when I have an appointment set for marketing presentation. They'll wait until they see my presentation before they sign with someone else. Sometimes they'll sign with someone else because my spa tells the truth and someone else told them an untruth, but that's the way it goes. So the answer is the spa always has to be done, in my opinion, because the work that you do on the spa gives you the confidence that you're pricing the property right, or that the client is pricing it too high or too low, and you have that information. You understand that. If you do CMA, the push button one, you don't know what those properties are like. You haven't spent the time, so you don't have the market knowledge.
Okay.
So the auction concept just makes the spa more important, because you're going to update the spa after the 90-day first phase, and you're going to update the spa after the auction, and you may update it in phase 3 as the market's going up or down. So I'm sorry, folks, but you can't get out of the work of doing the spa if you want to really be knowledgeable about what you're doing. Right?
Yeah.
So, and we just had a conversation before about explaining the spa, because many of our agents, I'll look at a spa and they've missed, they put 2 expireds on, or they only found 4 solds, or they only found 3 actives. And in this market where there aren't a whole lot of actives on the market and a ton of solds and not too many expireds, it's tough. But the point is, spa is the price of a house that a buyer will pay at any given point in time. right? And that point in time is the day that you do the spa. So if you only can find 3 expireds, it's impossible because you told them you're going to find 5. If there are 5 houses expired in the world and only 5, then you'll have to use the 5 that are expired in the world on your spot.
Yes.
Because when someone comes in with a wallet with a certain amount of money in, and they got to find what prices are too high,
Right.
the only thing you can average in is one that's 8 miles away, and it's similar, or 6 miles away and it's dissimilar. You got to have the 15 numbers on the spot.
Okay, let me ask you something. As far as like going, a lot of our agents do it, and I know you don't think this is right, but they go maybe a mile and a half outside of that property, and they don't come up with anything. Would you recommend just expanding that search? Because like you said to me once, oh, if they're going to buy a $15 million property here on the beach, Tabitha, couldn't they buy a $15 million property on the other coast? And wouldn't that be considered part of it too? And I think that's one of the things that maybe the agents just aren't understanding, or maybe I'm not understanding correctly.
I'll give you an example. Let's say we have a $4 million house on the Gulf of Mexico.
We have a couple of those right now, Ron.
But let's take a penthouse in a big condo.
Yes.
$4 million. You're not going to find a lot of $4 million condos on the Gulf of Mexico in Pinellas County.
No.
So let's say you find 3.
Yes.
And the next condos you can find in that price range are in Sarasota.
Yeah,
on
exactly.
Longboat
That's
Key.
common for us here.
So if you have 4 on the market at $4 million here on Pinellas beaches,
Right.
and the closest you can find are Longboat Key, and the only 2 that you can find anything like it are $5 million.
Right.
How will that affect the buyer that comes into town and he's looking for Pinellas County, but he's really not sure? He may go to Longboat Key, but he's going to have to pay $1 million more for that house, so that will affect his value on the spot.
Right.
Now, if you're into $10 million houses,
Okay.
and someone's looking for a $10 million house on the Gulf of Mexico, you're only going to find, I think there's one at 7 or 8 million right now. There's a bunch on Longboat Key, and there's tons of them in Naples.
Exactly.
So if someone wants that quality of house, they may be going to Naples or they may be going to Sarasota. But if you can't find any to match the $8 million house here,
Right.
if you put it on the spot for the guy here, he's going to see that the buyer that's coming from Toronto that's looking for the west coast of Florida can only go to Naples or Sarasota, but they're going to have to pay much more money. So that makes his place in Pinellas County worth a little bit more.
Okay.
Right? Because if you find the other comparables in Naples and Sarasota $2 million less, that money, that guy with the wallet is probably going to go to Naples or Sarasota.
Right. So you would use those on your spa then?
I would use them in my spot.
Okay. So
Now, if you're only going a mile and a half, this is beach talk. So you go a mile and a half of any house, you're going to find crack houses and multi-million-dollar houses, all within a mile and a half of anything, and water all around.
Yes.
So you have to go long. If you're doing the Barrier Islands, you've got 27 miles long and a quarter mile wide on an average.
Yeah.
So you got to go long. Now,
Yes.
and if you can't find anything that matches, you may have to go south.
Okay.
Now, you're not going to go to Pinellas Park.
Okay. No.
But you may, in
not
some
like
cases, go to downtown St. Pete.
Oh, yeah.
Because many times we have someone that says, I really like the beach, but downtown St. Petersburg, really vibrant. My budget is $3 million. Show me the best condos you got on the beaches, and show me the best condos you have downtown, and we'll make our choice.
Yeah, because there's also that beautiful marina down there, which a lot of
So
people
there are a lot of
looking
features.
for the boating and the
Jim?
airport.
Yeah.
Back to the auction. During the 30 days leading up to the auction, why wouldn't somebody be able to make an offer?
During the 30 days of the auction, we found that when I started this talk, I said that, or I think I said that real estate agents and auctioneers don't play well together.
Yep.
The listing agent that did the good job of getting the house listed wants control of that listing all the time. So they will be pushing that sale during the month that it switches over to the auction. And we found this happen. They will call and say, I got somebody that wants to make an offer right now. The auctioneer, and we failed at this before, but now the auctioneer very firmly says the bidding is not open until the auction. So tell that client he should have looked at the property during the 90 days because his only option now is to come to the auction. Now, when that didn't happen before, and we had one that the guy made an offer before the auction and we negotiated it up till the auction and it didn't go through. He was only one of 3 bidders at the auction. He knew what the price was, he knew what they take, and the auction failed, and he was the top bidder. We had to run out back and forth an hour and a half from him running out to the car with his pregnant wife in it, upping his price, us going back to the seller, trying to get the seller to come up, going back and forth. Because we allowed people to make offers before the auction, we only had 3 bidders at that auction. Once we stopped it, we averaged 30 or 40 bidders at an auction. So the psychology of cutting it off for that amount of time, if an agent, a co-op agent, or one of our agents has an interested party, one of the great dates is 30 days before this thing, Mr. Jones, this bidding is closed off on the phase 1 of the auction. So if you want to buy it and keep it from auction, make the offer before Tuesday because it goes into the 30-day period. Does that
And then
make
it
sense?
creates the sense of urgency.
Creates the urgency. It makes the guy angry because he says, oh, yeah, you told me to make it by Friday. It's now Monday. Say, sorry, you should have made the offer then. Your next offer will be a bid at the auction, which sounds like it's pretty harsh, but the auction system, as simple as it is, gets very complicated. And that's one of the things, that question that you brought up, is one of the mistakes that we made that we're not going to make again.
A lot of learning coming on.
A lot of learning coming up. So, what'd you learn about auctions?
Well, it sounds fairly simple, and it's 3 phases. And when I find somebody, I go get you or Jeff, and then I shut my mouth and let you guys do the close.
Right. Worst case will be that they say, no, this auction thing doesn't make any sense to me. Well, how'd you do with Tabitha? Well, she's a wonderful girl, and I think we're going to list the house for her.
Oh, wow.
So it may help you get the listing. That's one of the reasons why it's $1 million or more for the auctions.
Right.
So, frankly, because I don't want to get the auctioneer and myself, in many cases, we're going to have to go and travel and talk to the person. And I don't want to do it.
You don't want to talk to people, do you?
I don't want to talk to people. We can do
That's
it
why
on
we
the
do
phone
this every
most
week.
times. Yeah, you can log on if you don't, but if you don't, if you want to, but if you don't, you don't. So, that being said, do you think it's a good tool?
Yeah.
Cool. So if you use it, we have a brochure that we've been finalizing today
It's
that
really nice.
I sent out to everybody on the team. I didn't like a few things, like it's too dark, you can't read it.
I want the words to be bigger, Jim.
Words
Blind
gotta be
isn't bad. I can't see that.
So this brochure will be something that you would use for sale by owners and say, hey, you want a great new idea? This is our 3-phase auction. Here's the brochure. Expired listings, awesome, because the expired listings already signed the contract. This is an opportunity to sign a new contract and have a chance of not having to pay a commission.
Yeah, which I think a lot of people will find value in.
And anybody that's thinking of being a for sale by owner, which believe me, everybody that you're talking to has thought about it.
Oh,
With Zillow and Make Me Move and all the other things that are happening, This is something that may help you get in the door along with our strategic pricing analysis.
I think it definitely will. I want to see it on a thicker stock and bigger letters so I can read it. Too thin, and I can't see any of this. This looks like the back of a medicine
And
bottle.
after the 20 times we've been through it, we found one
It looks
typo.
Oh, good.
So when you have a typo in the second sentence and your exquisite property auctions, you cannot give a brochure out with one typo in it.
Yeah.
And that typo is very hard to find because it's the word there. And it's in the second sentence. And when I sent it to our proof person, and she came back and said, no, the word there is spelled right in the second sentence. And then I sent something back and said, the second word there in the second sentence is
There.
spelled wrong.
Yeah, it is.
T-H-E-R. No.
No, it's not what's in there
The
now.
whole third mistake. It was their listing, T-H-E-I-R.
Yeah.
And the sentence says, put my glasses on so I can see it. Now imagine with your presentations, how much work you have to do to get a presentation right. This has been gone over 20 times, and when we get it ready to go to market, their owners deserve unparalleled strategic marketing, which will allow them to maximize their return, T-H-I-E-R, return. So if you're selling $1 million property, most people want you to be able to sell. But think about what we go through. There are no two customers that are the same. So our presentation, although it's a quasi-canned pitch, has to be modifiable, if that's a word, to the personality of everybody that you're dealing with.
Yes.
So this auction thing is not going to appeal to a lot of people. A lot of people will say it's a great idea, but it's not for me. Some people will say, well, it's very unique and I love it, and I'll list my property for you, and we'll always leave it open in the future. As we do more auctions and they're more successful, if they are more successful, more will happen. Now, I said I got this idea 25 years ago. I got my auctioneer's license in 2012. We just started doing these things in 2017, and it's really not ready to be done yet, because the whole concept of the auctions was that when the market goes down in the next recession, and you can judge whenever that's going to be, when the market goes down, auctions are always a prime way of selling property, because there's tons of property on the market, and the one thing that makes a property stand out is when you say it's going to be sold at auction, because of the perception that people are going to get a deal.
Yeah.
Right?
Absolutely.
So what we're doing is a little warm-up for the next downturn in the market. It's been much more successful than I thought it would be, and there's almost no one that thinks it's a bad idea. It may not be a good idea for them, but it's a creative idea people like, and they'll listen to you. It will get you in the door.
Absolutely.
So with that, I am out the door, and you're out the door, and thank you very much.
Thank
See you
you.
next week.
We'll be seeing you. Peace out. Bye, Dad.
Okay, so